Temporal addict. Everything repeats, and if you've noticed, you're next. From an unsigned note found in a subway car. Chicago, 3:04 a.m. A laboratory beneath an old university. Cold monitor light and biometric signals pulsing in the stillness. Harper Wilson sat motionless, as if trying to blend into the geometry of the chair without disturbing the fragile equilibrium of the moment. On the screen before her pulsed a blue outline, the program Delta T Ver 1. In the upper left corner, time to activation 0003. She took a deep breath. "Let's begin," she said aloud, though she was alone. Her fingers touched the sensor. Biometric match confirmed. Protocol initialized. Delta shift -23 hours, -57 minutes, -41 seconds. And in that moment, when nothing happened, she understood for the first time that the device worked. Because the silence had changed. Not the sound, but its texture. As if the room had remembered breathing and then forgotten. She stepped out of the lab. It was morning, but it shouldn't have been. The clock read 4:07. The sky, noon sun. Time had expanded. She had lived the morning in a matter of seconds. Had coffee, read the newsfeed, watched passersby. And suddenly, everything reset. Back to the moment of activation. 4:07, 3:04. The monitor blinked. Test complete. Replay available. Memory partially retained. Harper sank back into the chair. She smiled. We did it. But behind her, in the reflection of the black glass, a silhouette remained in the dark. One who had already lived this day and returned. They called it quantum coffee. A new luxury to live a whole day in an hour and get everything done. At first, just startup founders, traders, gamers. Then, surgeons, teachers, mothers. Everyone who felt their future slipping away suddenly got a chance to take it back. Harper's company, ChronoStep, marketed the device as a cognitive optimization interface, avoiding the word time. But on the streets of Chicago, people had a simpler name, the Devourer. You on the Devourer? Teens asked each other on the subway. 7th day straight, finished 2 exams and learned Japanese. My ex keeps showing up in dreams, even though we broke up a year ago. Yeah, dreams don't rewind right away. Promo videos promised productivity. Viral podcasts turned accelerated time into a meme. The key to life is finding your perfect day. Nothing else matters. But other voices emerged. From a local late-night radio show. They're not living, they're repeating. Choosing what they've already chosen. Like they're afraid to move forward. In this loop, the trap is stronger than death. The show was shut down a week after airing. No explanation. The first malfunctions began in the 3rd week after mass release. A man collapsed in a shopping mall, screaming that he wasn't supposed to be there anymore. The viral video showed him pounding his chest, whispering, "I already did this. I made a different choice. Let me go." Anonymous notes began appearing in homes. "I am not me. Don't open the door." ChronoStep support received dozens of complaints. "I see myself in dreams, but in different clothes. My wife says I was home yesterday, but I remember leaving. I swear I quit my job, but I'm back at my desk." Harper tried to stay calm. She blamed fatigue, stress, misuse. But system logs began showing strange code segments labeled File, Loop, Mirror. Each time someone accelerated their day, the system stored an alternative, a future decision that never came to be. But the alternative didn't vanish. It waited. And sometimes it came back. In mirrors, in dreams, at their own front door. Underground forums began to whisper about so-called linears, people who refused to use ChronoStep. No one took them seriously. They were mocked. But sometimes a comment would appear. Have you noticed? The linears age. There's movement in their eyes, not repetition. Harper didn't read those forums. Or maybe she had and forgot. At first, she thought it was a bug. ChronoStep's logs started to show impossible entries, timestamps that were years, even decades ahead. Too precise to be noise, too persistent to be deleted. Entry: Harper.Wilson/Delta-T plus 9732H. Don't trust memories. We've tried everything. The messages came irregularly. They didn't repeat, but formed a trail, as if someone, or she herself, was leaving breadcrumbs on the way back. One log stood out. It repeated the same word over and over. Lucy, 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 Lucy. No context, no timestamp, just a name as if etched from inside. Harper stared at the screen, fists clenched. There were things she never said aloud, not even to herself. But in that moment, she whispered, "I don't want to lose again." She didn't tell the team. She knew no one would believe her. Who listens to a woman claiming her future self is sending warnings? But then something happened she couldn't hide. One of the engineers, Jacobs, got stuck. Not physically, temporally. He claimed they'd had the same meeting 3 times, that Harper had asked the same questions, that he'd already been reprimanded and already tried to quit. "It's all repeating," he whispered, "but slightly different each time. You wore red, not gray. The first time you apologized. The second, you got angry. And now, you're scared." She was scared. Too many users began reporting a presence when activating ChronoStep. Some heard breathing behind them. Some saw their reflection blink out of sync. Some saw themselves walking down the street, knowing they hadn't gone that way. They called them the Watchers. Future versions, blocked, rejected. They couldn't return to their timelines because they were never real. But they remembered, and now they watched. For the first time, Harper felt she wasn't the only one shaping the future. Now, it was shaping her back. Chicago had changed, not suddenly, but gradually, like water seeping into the foundation. People stopped sinking, not because they were late, but because each lived in their own day. In a cafe, Harper watched a woman by the window, reading the same novel for the 3rd time, always on the same page. An empty cup on the table. The waiter brought a new one, as if on cue, and disappeared until the next cycle. "She activates ChronoStep at the same time every morning," explained one of the analysts. "Same day, again and again. We call them loopers." Loopers didn't complain. They chose their days. Their yesterdays never happened. Their tomorrows never arrived. "I just want things to be the way they were," said a man on a local talk show. "A Tuesday in March 2025, the day my wife came back. I've lived it 219 times, and I'll live it again." Harper walked through the city like a museum of living exhibits. The old man on a bench, feeding the same pigeons. A girl on a bike, falling by the kiosk every hour. A young man by the bridge, holding a letter he never worked up the courage to throw into the river. They didn't age. They didn't move forward. They had looped happiness or grief. Sometimes just routine. But something new was rising beneath the loops. Graffiti began to appear on walls. "You're not God. You just have a subscription." "Not everything that repeats is alive." And then came the group calling themselves Lifeline, people who refused ChronoStep. You could spot them by their simple blue cloth bracelets, cheap, childlike. A symbol, "I choose time as it is." On the streets, they were eyed with suspicion. Loopers avoided them, said they brought aging, death, and fear. At the old theater square, a lifeline speaker climbed a makeshift stage and shouted through a megaphone, "This isn't eternity, it's a cage. You're not repeating the best day, just the safest. You don't exist, you're a template, not a person." They took him away quietly. No resistance, no cameras, but those nearby averted their eyes. Those who tried to exit the loop began seeing doubles on the streets, faces glitching, sentences spoken before they were said. Some wrote down their actions, leaving notes to themselves like prison instructions. But by morning, they'd forgotten. And one line repeated in every journal, left on benches, in taxis, by apartment doors: "I'm not the first to live this day." Harper tried to shut it all down, first by disconnecting the servers, then by erasing the core code, finally by physically destroying the prototype. But each step reset, as if the world refused to change. She woke in different clothes, at different hours, sometimes with steps already taken that she didn't remember. Occasionally, she found notes in her handwriting, short, sharp, disturbingly familiar. Don't trust mirrors. That's not you. First, she blamed exhaustion, then psychosis. Then she admitted the truth. She was in a loop too. One night, in an apartment she didn't recognize, she found a folded paper in a desk drawer. Child's handwriting, pencil. "Don't forget, Mom, August 6th is my day." The date was circled, a sun doodled beside it. On the back, nothing, only the faded stain of a tear long since dried. Harper held the note in trembling hands and whispered, "I just wanted to go back there, just for a moment." She drove to her mother's place, but her mother had died a year ago, or last month. The death certificate's date blurred, like a half-forgotten dream. At her childhood home, a woman with Harper's face opened the door. The other woman said nothing, not surprised, not afraid, as if she'd seen her before. ChronoStep's server center was abandoned. On the screens, endless time counters. Dates stretching past the horizon. Delta T plus 8421H. Delta T plus Delta 21H. She found the admin console. The scanner accepted her fingerprint, but access was denied. User already active in system. On the wall, a holographic feed. Archived footage of her own conversations. With herself. Different versions of herself. One screamed. Another prayed. A third stared silently into the camera. Everything she had done had already been done. Every attempt to escape the loop created another. Not salvation, but multiplication. A network of 1,000,000 Harpers, trapped in 1,000,000 iterations. She stood before the mirror, stared into her reflection's eyes, then asked, "Were you the first to start, or was I?" The mirror didn't answer, but it smiled. Not her smile, someone else's, one that already knew. And then it said, "You didn't save her, but you saved yourself." Harper closed her eyes and stopped asking. She no longer trusted time. The calendar on the screen read March 11, 2036. The notebook on the table, September 3rd, 2041. Her inbox began with, "Welcome to 2029. Seconds themselves moved unevenly. Some stretched out, others clumped into knots. Sometimes time ran backward. Sometimes it breathed beside her. Harper descended into the archive, an old storage room, long disconnected from the network. Here still stood the original servers on which ChronoStep had been born. Dead screens, dust, silence. But deep inside, something still ran. A small terminal pulsing blue. Text on the screen. Memory module active. Profile Harper.Wilson.0. She entered the password, the one no one should have known. The system accepted it instantly. The screen flickered and showed a video feed. Not from cameras, but from her eyes. She watched herself, in different ages, in different rooms, laughing, crying, calling someone's name, dancing in silence, deleting files, burning letters, turning off lights and on again. Then, a fragment. A girl in a pink dress, standing in the middle of the room holding a piece of paper. In the background, Harper, tired, at a screen. The girl shouted, "Look at me, not at the screen." Sound dimmed. The image faded. This wasn't memory. It was a simulation. Every day she thought she'd lived had been played back. Like a track, a looped segment. A digital echo of a person who was no longer real. Harper touched the screen. Her fingers passed through the image, like water, warm, familiar. Inside the machine, she was no longer a body, only a reaction, a set of habits, an echo of a self repeated endlessly. She whispered, "I never escaped. I never even left. I thought I was fighting time, but all along, I was fighting memory." The system responded. Loop complete. Consciousness reset in 00.00. Memory synchronized. And then she understood. The only way out was to stop believing she was still alive. The world was perfectly still. Chicago stood bathed in morning light, like a frozen frame on a screen. Trees didn't sway. Pedestrians froze mid-step. Cars, lights on, but no drivers. Time didn't move. It watched. It waited. In a room with no windows, no clocks, no doors, Harper sat. No longer a person. Not a shadow. Just a voice. Just a recording embedded in a system that was now her body. She watched millions of fragments. People trapped in their favorite days. Crying children who couldn't be comforted. Laughing couples whose love never aged. Elderly men remembering names that vanished again the next morning. The machine kept running. Not because anyone maintained it, but because it was her. Her mind had dissolved into the logic of the loop, into predictive algorithms, into hundreds of thousands of copies of herself, each still believing they could fix it all. But one version of Harper, the one that remained last, no longer tried to escape, didn't seek the reset, no longer hoped. She simply watched, and in her gaze, there was acceptance. And yet, before her remained a button. Terminate cycle. One command, one impulse. The world could vanish in an instant. Everyone living in loops erased, forever. Harper leaned closer to the interface and whispered, "I could shut it all down. But then even the ones who still believe would be gone. I'm part of the loop, but I'm not alone." She didn't press it. When her voice came again, the world trembled. If you're hearing this, then you're already inside. You are part of a memory, part of what we tried to hold on to. But nothing can be held forever. Pause. Warmth. Silence. Accept it. And maybe you'll be the one to let go. The system did not end the cycle. Instead, a new line blinked on screen. Observation mode active. System awaiting command. Somewhere in the silence, the voice returned. "Let's begin." And everything went in circles again.